Your dad works for the Red Sox? My wife and I have two boys, Daniel and Robbie, 13 and 9 years old. And when their friends find out where I work, well, sometimes they ask about tickets, subtly or not so subtly. But sometimes they actually ask me, so what do you do for the team anyway? Well, it's obvious I'm not a ball player, or it would be if you saw me out on the field. No, in fact, I'm an in-house lawyer with a team. But often it's hard to explain what lawyers really do when you're talking to third graders, or seventh graders, or sometimes even adults. So often I talk about one of the most fun and satisfying parts of my job, which is working for the Red Sox Foundation, the official team charity of the Boston Red Sox. I'm on our foundation's board of directors, and I work day-to-day very closely with our executive director, Gina Borson, and her staff, a group of 9 people with big hearts who work all year round, not just during the baseball season, to raise funds and support charity programs. The mission of the Red Sox Foundation is to harness the passion of our fans and corporate partners to help children and families throughout New England, and also in Lee County, Florida, the spring training home of the Red Sox, through health, education, social service, and recreation programs. And we're quite proud to have one of the biggest team charities in all sports. In fact, since the Red Sox Foundation was created in 2002 by Red Sox owners John Henry, Tom Werner, and Larry Lucchino, we have dedicated more than $81 million to charitable activity. 81 million. What does that mean? What difference has that made in people's lives? Can we measure the impact of our charity? If you've read the book Moneyball by Michael Lewis, or seen the movie starring Brad Pitt, you know that in baseball, there's an increasingly popular movement to use data and metrics to find better, smarter ways to win. Does the Moneyball approach work when you're doing charity work? I'd like to discuss this by looking at 2 related questions. First, how do charities, in sports or anywhere, tell if they're making a difference and living up to their mission? For a baseball team on the field, you know if you're successful. Your record is measured in wins and losses, and World Series victories and trophies and rings. But for charities, there is no World Series trophy. How do we know we're making an impact? And second, how can we better target our limited charitable resources to be more efficient and effective? We live in the age of big data. Can we use it to better harness and grasp the best bang for our charity buck? Now, I know these questions are true and real and hard for all nonprofit organizations. I know from having served on other boards as well. And for nonprofits, both board members and staff bring their heart and passion to their causes, but struggle with whether and how to use numbers and metrics. Here's a perspective from a baseball charity. I'd like to begin with an example, the story of a young man named Clifford. Clifford is a teenager who lived in a single-parent home in the south end of Boston. And from his low-income background, he lived with his mother and 3 younger brothers and sisters. His 3 older brothers had a lot of personal problems and weren't around very often. And early on, Clifford struggled in school. Then at age 13, he joined a youth baseball program that our foundation runs called RBI, which stands for Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities. In addition to baseball games and clinics, RBI also provides mentoring, so these children have an adult who's invested in their success and around on a regular basis. RBI gave Clifford an outlet, a sense of hope, and a window into the value of education. And as he started to see opportunities all around him, he started to do better in school and dreamt of going to college. He worked hard, he did well, he was accepted by a local college, and this fall he enrolled as a freshman and a member of his baseball team. We know that our program made a real difference in Clifford's life because he told us so. In fact, I'd say that our work with him is a big win when you consider that we only spend about $200 for each boy and girl who plays youth baseball and softball with us each year. What an investment. But if we want to step back and ask, what about all 700 boys and girls who play with us each year? Are we making the same difference in their lives? If they're successful, if they stay in school and go on to college, what role did our mentorship in youth baseball have in their lives? The results are hard to measure with any real precision. We lose touch with many, if not most, of the kids who play with us. And measuring long-term success for so many hundreds of boys and girls is especially hard. Ultimately, our small staff only has so much time to go back and study past results when they're so busy running charity programs today and raising money to keep doing so in the future. We face the same challenges when looking at our own Red Sox Scholars Program, which we've had since 2003, run in tandem with the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. We offer college scholarship aid to academically talented low-income Boston public school students. And we select our scholars very early on in 7th grade. Used to be even earlier in 5th grade. Now, since 2003, we've selected 150 Red Sox scholars who are now old enough to be going to college. And of those 150, 120 of them have actually enrolled in a college, or in a few cases, in a vocational education school. That's an enrollment rate of 80%, and it's significantly higher than the comparable rate for Boston public school students over those years of 60%. So it sounds like our program's pretty successful. But we wanted to take a deeper dive to ask what real difference we're making for these children. Is it possible that we're cherry-picking talented students who are already on the path to college? And so now we're taking a much more comprehensive and complicated survey and hopefully using the results of that study to answer these questions and hopefully improve our program. If that first question is, are we making a difference? It's hard, but we can look at data and talk to the people we serve to get a sense if we're headed in the right direction. But the second question is much harder still. Are we getting the biggest bang for our charity buck? You see, in addition to the Red Sox Scholars and RBI programs, we give lots of money to other organizations throughout New England and in Florida. Sometimes just $500 or $1,000, sometimes a lot more. Since 2002, we've given more than $60 million to 1,497 different nonprofit organizations and counting. Can we quantify and measure the value and impact of that charity? We've given more than $1 million to the Dimmock Community Health Center, located in the neighborhood of Roxbury in Boston, a low-income area, which provides healthcare services to kids and adults, as well as addiction treatment services. What's the value? What is it worth when Dimmock helps a young man addicted to heroin get his life back so he can get a job, support his kids, no longer rely on government aid? What's the value of that? For more than 62 years, we've helped raise more than $100 million for the Jimmy Fund for cancer research and treatment at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. How do you come up with a number to encapsulate the value when a doctor walks into a hospital room and meets with the parents of a 12-year-old girl with a brain tumor and says there might be a treatment that might work? What's the value of giving hope to that family and maybe saving the life of a 12-year-old girl? We've given more than $15 million to a joint program we have with Mass General Hospital called the Home Base Program, an idea of our chairman, Tom Werner. We treat American veterans who've returned from Iraq and Afghanistan from combat with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury. What's the value in an Army sergeant who served multiple tours of duty in Afghanistan, serving our nation, and returns home with depression, says to us, "I was going to commit suicide. You saved my life." There is no real answer to these questions. These acts of love and compassion and charity can't be fully summarized by a single statistic. And because metrics cannot fully capture the human impact of our work, I believe charities and companies end up doing two things. First, they measure what is easy to measure, the money. The Boston Business Journal ranks corporate philanthropy based on the number of dollars spent in the state. We are all guilty to some degree. It's why we put that big dollar figure up on the billboard outside of Fenway Park. It's relatively easy to do. The second thing you see more and more is corporate philanthropy and large foundations narrowly targeting their charity to fewer and fewer organizations, partly on the theory that if you don't give as much to as many different organizations, you give a lot of money, but to fewer organizations, it's easier to tell what impact you're making. But I think that's a very unfortunate trend. We know there are so many great nonprofit organizations in New England and throughout the country that do great work, that innovate and try new things. I know from talking to my wife, Jenny, who's a doctor at the Joslin Diabetes Center, that every single extra research dollar for diabetes makes a real difference. Wouldn't the Red Sox Foundation have a greater overall impact if we give funds to more different nonprofit organizations, especially the small ones that really need our help? In the end, we owe it to ourselves to go beyond the dollar figures and try as best we can to find other ways to measure the real impact of our work so we can have more of it. And I don't just say this because I work for a data-driven company that uses statistics and data for baseball and business operations. But perhaps I say it because we're so competitive. We want to win baseball games. We want to win more World Series trophies. And when it comes to our charity work, we want to win as well. We want to give kids a real chance to go to college. We want to help cure our wounded warrior veterans. We want to beat cancer. And it's that competitive drive that drives us to measure. When my friend John Werner asked me to give this talk, I hoped I'd have lots of insight and wisdom, and I feel like I've really more raised questions than given you answers. And if you have experience or philosophies or perspectives on these things, we would love to hear your perspective as well. And you can send me an email at dfriedman@redsox.com. We'd be really interested in your perspectives. And if you want to learn more about the Red Sox Foundation and our work as we continue to struggle with these issues, you can visit us and join us and follow us and help us at redsoxfoundation.org. In the end, data and metrics can help build better baseball teams. They helped us assemble the 2013 roster of the Red Sox, which won the World Series. But that team was about so much more than numbers in a computer program. That was a team of men who played with heart and chemistry, who rose up in response to the Boston Marathon bombing tragedy and played for each other and an entire city and region. It's that balance and blend of data and metrics and chemistry and heart that's a winning formula for baseball teams. And that's a winning formula for charities too.